Hello, Grace Church. It's Wednesday, May 20th, and I hope you're doing well. I want to make a couple announcements. First of all, if you're a high school senior or you know of a high school senior, would you make sure that we have your contact information? We want to make sure that we invite you to a time that we can honor you and this graduation season. So we just want to make sure nobody slips through the cracks. And so if you're a high school senior or you know of a high school senior, please make sure that we have your contact information. When I think about times of gathering, we're hoping to gather our high school seniors. We're actually hoping to start to gather relatively soon. Yesterday, Clark County applied to move into phase 2. And as we begin to move through these phases, we're going to find opportunities to gather, first of all in small groups, and then eventually on Sunday mornings. I'm looking forward to that, and as we start to plan for that, please be in prayer for us. The reality is that closing down came quickly, and it was relatively easy. Opening up is a little different. It's going to happen in phases, and it's going to happen as we begin to make sure the environment is such that people are comfortable in coming. And so please be in prayer for us about that as we plan, and we'll be getting some details out to you hopefully very soon. When I think about the rhythms of Jesus, one of my favorite things is the power of stories. I've experienced personally the power of stories. All kinds of things come to my mind. One of those things that came to my mind is a movie that was released in 1942 that had a dramatic impact on our culture, and it in fact dramatically affected the behavior of literally thousands of people. It was a film that in 2008 was recognized by the American Film Institute as number 3 of the top 10 animated films of all time. This film has such a powerful story, it has such a powerful impact on our nation that hunting dramatically dropped in the years after the release of this movie. Well, by now you've figured out what that movie was called. The name of that movie was Bambi. And Bambi affected our nation because it was a powerful story. And in fact, to this day, there is what is known as the Bambi effect, and it's this objection to killing an animal that is perceived to be cute or adorable, such as a deer, where killing an animal that seems to be somewhat repulsive or less desirable, there doesn't seem to be any challenge to that at all. Well, it all goes back to the power of stories. And when I think of the Bible, I don't think of the Bible ever as words on a page or rules or regulations. I always think of the Bible in terms of stories. It's stories of men and women who were literally living real life. I mean, think about it for just a minute. Just a minute. Step back and consider the scriptures. Stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Gideon, and Ruth, and David, and Elijah, and Elisha, and Jonah, and then you move into the New Testament, and Mary, and Joseph, and Matthew, and Peter, and James, and John, these fishermen, and even stories about people we don't even know their name, like the woman at the well, and the woman who reached out to touch the hem of Jesus's garment. All those stories have incredible, amazing impact as we hear those stories. Stories have impact. I was literally woke up in the middle of the night 2 nights ago thinking about this idea of stories, and an old hymn came to my mind. The hymn's name was Blessed Assurance, and the verse is this is my story, this is my song. And some of the phrases in this old hymn are amazing phrases. One phrase says this, visions of rapture burst on my sight. Another phrase is this, watching and waiting, looking above, looking above. Visions of rapture, watching. All those words were written by a woman named Fanny Crosby who was blind. She was blind, but she was talking about visions of rapture, watching and waiting, because she saw with great hope. She saw even though she couldn't see. She saw with hope. And it was an amazing song, and there's power in stories. I want to encourage you. Do you know your story? Do you know your story? The truth is, your story has power. I think it's so important that you believe and know the fact that your story has power. Do you know how to tell your story? Have you told your story? Again, I want to encourage you to know your story, to believe your story has power, and to tell your story. Remember the words of Jesus when he said these simple words to his disciples. He said this, go tell. That's what we're called to do. Go and tell. Tell our story. Tell the story of what Jesus is doing in me right now. Tell the story of what Jesus is doing in my life and will do in my future, and tell the story of what he's done in my past. Our story, your story, my story, it has power. And so I want to encourage you, know your story, tell your story, believe there's power in the story of what Jesus Christ has done and is doing in our life right now. Well, Grace Church, I hope that you are encouraged to practice the rhythms of following Jesus, because a follower of Jesus is a follower of Jesus no matter what's taking place in our circumstance. The Lord bless you. I hope he encourages you. I hope he gives you strength for this day. In his mighty name, amen.